Welcome to our third installment of NAESP's Assistant Principals Webinar Series. Today is Tuesday, April the 9th, 2019, and my name is Aaron Lurie. I'm the Director of Professional Learning here at NAESP. Happy Assistant Principals Week. Today, we have two outstanding assistant principals who will speak on the topic time management, the personal and professional life of assistant principal. So our first speaker for today is a 2017-2018 National Outstanding Assistant Principal of the Year, Tracy Sexton Oliver. Tracy's title under the title of Time Management is Time Management and Balance. Tracy, how are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Would you tell the NAESP universe a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Currently, I am the assistant principal at an elementary school here in Minnesota. We have about 700 students in our pre-K 6th grade building. There's about 75 staff members as well. It's a relatively small district when you consider school districts because there are two buildings in the district, the one elementary school as well as the junior, senior high school. Outside of my professional work in that, I'm also a mom of three kids ages 10 to 17, a wife, a sister, an auntie. Glad to say I have a good set of friends that keep me busy as well, and I really try to be an active community member here in Lake City.
Well, I know everybody's excited about this time management piece. I remember when I was assistant principal, that was one thing that I had issues with. So I'm waiting to see what you're going to share with the universe today.
Yeah, I think it's something that we all try to work towards. I don't know that any of us ever master it, though.
Great. All right, I hand the floor to you, Tracy.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. All right, as far as time management and the balance of personal and professional life kind of goes, I like to think of things almost as a teeter-totter when it comes to this. And that's because I don't think, if I look at the teeter-totter, both the professional on one side and the personal on the other side, neither one really has control at any point in time, and it's more about the ride between the two sides. You know, sometimes you're up in the air and your personal life maybe takes more attention, more effort, more of your brain power, and other times it's the professional life. And I think as long as the ride is balanced, that you're having fun along the ride, that's what we're going for. I know as a kid, sometimes you'd get stuck up in the air and you'd have people kind of holding you down and stuck there, and you'd be like, no, I want to get down, and we get stuck there too. Same thing happens, you know, on the bottom side of the teeter-totter. Sometimes we sit there, we start to feel a little bored, like this isn't so fun. It's all about kind of going back and forth for me, and knowing that on any particular day, week, month, and sometimes even year, it's not completely balanced, and one piece is taking more of your time. So I like to look at it as kind of a ride, and as long as we're enjoying the ride, we're okay. Go ahead to the next. Oh, with that in mind, kind of as far as enjoying the ride, I have 5 things that I try to keep in mind. We'll call them tips today for enjoying the ride. So we can go ahead and take a look at the first one. The first piece of information that has been valuable for me is kind of to know your values. This has been a big thing for me because I think when you know your why you choose to spend your time that way, it's easier to make decisions, you do things more efficiently, and you're okay with how you spend your time and effort. I had a colleague earlier in my career share with me that you only kind of feel burnt out when how you're spending your time isn't how you value your time. So knowing what your values are will help with that. And I have a couple of resources here for you to kind of get to that place where you maybe are able to identify your values a little bit more easily. The first one are called value cards, and there's lots of different organizations that have them. I just have a link to one that I've used, and it's where you go through about 49, 50 different values, and you narrow them down to 5. And then those 5 are your most important. And I think when you get to decision times, or you're feeling about how should I spend my time, reflecting back on what is it that you value will help you feel good about the decision you make in terms of how you're going to spend your time. I would also say another piece that can be related to this that can be a tip is, especially for me, keeping visuals, reminders about how I want to spend my time, about what I value in front of me, so that when those moments of decision time come up, they're right there and they help me. So another link that's on this page is to an organization called My Intent, and it just makes little trinkets, things like, if you can see it, this little bracelet here has the word integrity on it, which is one of the things that I value. I can wear it, and when I'm in a spot where I'm like, all right, is this matching how I want to spend my time, how I value my decisions, that is there as a reminder for me. So that visual piece has been big for me as well. So the first tip would be to know your values. And then moving on to the second is, I think another big piece for me has always been building capacity in others. This job is crazy. Most jobs in education are crazy. So a big piece for me is recognizing that you can't do it all. And quite frankly, you shouldn't. You're surrounded by amazing people that have all kinds of talents and passions, and in this position, we can tap into those. I think you need to spend time with the people you're working with, find out what are their skills, what are their strengths, what are their passions, and then help them grow those, help them strengthen them, encourage them to take leadership positions so that you're not the person doing all the work and that others are sharing in that, and they're sharing it in a way that they feel good about. I think some things that can be helpful are on the right side of the screen, the additional tips. One thing that I think a job as an AP or any administrator really needs to do is to set structures in place so that others can be successful. So one thing I tend to tell staff members is part of my job is to get things rolling, to help you get things going, and then for me to get out of the way so that they can do the amazing work they're ready to do. So I think that's one thing to have in the back of your mind. I think another thing is that we need to let go of little things. For many of us in administration, we're here because we're organized, we like things done a certain way, kind of have a plan in our mind. Those are all great, but don't spend your time and effort on those things that aren't essential. Let go of the little things. It doesn't matter if somebody would put a table in a certain place and you would put it in a different place. That's the stuff you got to let go of. If there are things that you need done a certain way, that's what you have to be clear about up front, and then let go of the other stuff. And that'll free up some time for you as well. And I think the last thing related to this that I'd like to say is that we need to acknowledge and celebrate the great work that others do so that they continue to do it. There's not enough celebrating in education, so keep that going with you as well. I have a couple more resources on the next page. You want to flip to that? One of my favorite authors is Michael Fullan, and so there's a couple of resources from him here that relate to building capacity in others. One is his book, The Principle, that has a section on building capacity, and the other is a video clip from a series called Motion Leadership, where he breaks down 6 traits, and this is a piece on building capacity. Just a couple minutes, so it's a good place to take a look and see some other ideas for building that capacity in others. All right, moving on to tip 3. This is probably one of my favorites. Make connections. Administration is so much different than a teaching position in countless ways, but I think one of the biggest differences is you're no longer surrounded by an army of people that understand your job. So it can be difficult at times. So one thing we need to do is we need to reach out to others in similar positions, and this I think has 2 benefits. One, you learn from others and therefore save yourself time. You don't need to do all the research on everything because other people have done that, and then when you do it, you share it out and save them time. I also think another benefit is that work connections become personal connections, and so that helps provide some balance as well, because it's not all work or play. Sometimes it's both. I had the ability to attend a workshop last Friday with other administrators in the area, and it was just a time for us to connect, and I will have to say that that was one of the most useful, beneficial in so many ways for me, because I got great ideas, but I also got to see old friends and make those connections again. So I think that helps us understand that we don't always need to make the choice. A couple of ways for you to get involved. Get involved in your state and local divisions. Without a doubt, they have been an invaluable resource for me. Go to your state conferences, go to the national conference. I was there in Orlando last year. I came away with so many ideas, and many of which saved me a ton of time this year, and also led to connections that, again, have saved me time in the end and allowed me to grow some personal connections as well. Another way to make some of those connections, I think, is through social media. Twitter happens to be my favorite. So I think you can reach out to others there. And once again, you're going to save yourself the time and the effort for some ideas. And sometimes those connections on social media become personal connections as well. All right. So we're going to flip to the next slide for tip number 4. Probably the hardest for me personally. And I think that's don't forget about yourself. We've all seen something like this quote on the bottom of the page where it says you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. We know this, we just don't always embody it. But you do need to make your health a priority. Make sure you're getting the sleep you need. Make sure you're eating well, you're exercising, whatever it is that kind of feeds your soul. You need to make sure that you're taking the time to do it. So you're making your health a priority. Give yourself a chance to grow. I know that we preach that to our staff, that they need to do that. We also need to do that. We need to take time to read, to write, and reflect. And then even outside of the professional piece, make sure you have time for those things that make you happy. Spend time with your family and friends, your hobbies, your passions. Try new things, laugh. And I think importantly, say no when you need to or you want to. You can't do everything, and everyone else realizes that, so you have to make sure to do that as well.
So Tracy, I had a question about this.
Yeah.
For our early assistant principals, it's their first or second year, that eating well and sleeping and exercise is very, very important. I remember being an early career assistant principal, and I had to eat on the run. You didn't have an opportunity you had so many things that you were delegated, and I caught myself eating the school lunch sometimes and had to move. So tell us a little bit more how you handled that situation with managing your time with eating, sleeping, and exercise, as well as trying to read and write and reflect. If you can get into detail a little bit more about that.
Sure thing. I think for me, some of that is about making choices. So you can't, for me, I can't do all of those every day. Eating well, like in that aspect, I tend to do a lot of food prep on the weekend. I tend to look at my schedule for the week ahead, and I might say, all right, on this day, I am going to go to school lunch. But on these 3 days, I'm packing my lunch, and it's going to be something that is a favorite, or it's healthy, or when I'm running to my son's baseball game, I've grabbed something that's good for me. And going that way. So some of the eating well is about prepping ahead of time, making meals for my family of 5 that really would feed a family of 10 so that we all have something good to eat the next day. The exercise piece is a piece that I slowly figured out I have to carve time out for. I'm not a morning person. There's nothing about me that is a morning person. But what I've discovered is when I get up early and exercise, I'm a better person, period. So I've kind of become a morning person to make that happen. Do I do it every day? Nope. My goal is 3 times a week. Sometimes I make 5. Most of the time I'm somewhere between 3 and 4. And I'm okay with that as long as I know I'm making the effort. And I think once you continue to do it, you just feel so much better. So you start to make it a priority. And again, it goes back to knowing what you value. And I value living a healthy life. So that has to get on the calendar first. Reading, writing, and reflecting, I think one thing that we don't always do is during a professional day, carve out time for those things, and we have to be okay with that. We have to say that, you know what, I'm going to read this article now, or I'm going to take a few minutes to jot down, my goals for today, or reflect on something that went well or didn't go well, stop in and talk to a colleague about that during my work day. And, something I shared the other day with people is that you're going to be busy. There's no other way around it. You are going to be busy, but you get to decide how to spend your busy. So spend it doing the things that you love and enjoy and think will make your life better. I don't know if that answers the question, Aaron.
Sure. I just wanted you to just reflect on that more. Great response as well. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no,
that was just a struggle that I had, and I didn't know if others had that as well, with getting the appropriate amount of sleep and eating well, as well as getting the opportunity to reflect and write down and read. So those are very important topics. And again, thank you for elaborating on that a little bit more.
Yep. And this morning I made a choice between exercise and sleep. And as long as I don't make the same choice every day, I'm okay. today I decided that sleep was what I needed, so I went with that. And tomorrow I'll make a different choice. So in the end, once again, we're going to balance out. Yeah, so just I really encourage us to take time for those things. They make a big difference, and I do really believe that we are better for others when we take care of ourselves. You can give a lot more when you're feeling at your best physically and mentally. All right, we can move on. This maybe is the, when tip 5 is about taking maybe tips 1 through 4 and figuring out how to make them a reality. I would say find and create systems that work for you. And I think there are a million out there. Everybody's got a way to organize things, and every one of those systems works for someone. The key is to find a system that works for you, or to adjust systems that exist so that they can work for you. Some of the things that have worked for me are scheduling what matters. And I mean putting it in writing on a calendar where everyone can see it. So, one thing that I value here at school is getting into classrooms to read, and so that is something that goes on my calendar. And once it's on my calendar, then they know they have to schedule around it. So I take time to do that. I also put personal things on my calendar, such as, tonight my son has a baseball game at 4:30, so I put that on there that at 4:30 I am going to leave so that I can have that piece of my life, as well. And, every day you have to make choices, but at least they get on the calendar so you can start from there. I think another thing is that you have to find a way at some point to turn off some of the email or phone calls. There's no doubt, I think that anyone would say that email can be the death of any of us. In the evening, I certainly look at it, but it doesn't pop up on my phone every time somebody emails me, and that's the only way I could survive, because as soon as I knew somebody wanted something, I would be looking at it and trying to do it, and my family would be like, mom's on her phone again. So I've tried to put those things away. A piece or a tool, I guess, that helped me with that is Boomerang. And it's an extension you can add on your email that allows you to schedule out emails. So sometimes you'll get something in, you're like, I need to remember to send this out to people next Tuesday. No, you don't need to remember it. Do it now and set the Boomerang timer for it to go out then. So that's been a good tool for me as well. And, create your own system, your organizational system. Things that I have dabbled with and have been working well for me are like the dot notebooks, just as a way to keep my thoughts organized and to have one place to go back to all those random thoughts that I have. So they're all in there and I know where to go to find them once I put them in there. Creating a file system, whether it's electronically or, the old paper copy. There's, I have a drawer that has, every month has a file, and for some of those things that pop up, you get a piece of mail in September and you're like, oh yeah, we need to remember to send in the Eagle Bluff field trip in January. So it goes in the January one, so that at least I have a system of managing those things versus kind of digging through and starting from the top every day. I think another thing is to establish routines for the ongoing or frequent tasks. So a couple things that I do, I set some meeting agendas that are just standard. So every week I have a special ed meeting with all the special ed teachers, and we have a standard agenda, and certain pieces of it just, get added in or added out, but, every time there's a piece where we're talking about who's in current eval. So all that has to change are the names, or we link to that document. And so not every week I'm recreating the wheel for something that we're going to do over and over again. Google Docs is a system that our school uses, and we make a lot of things in there where I create it, and it's in one spot for everyone. We can all access it, so we don't have to do it over and over again. So things that are going to be frequent or ongoing, you have to find a way to minimize the time that it takes for you to revisit them each time. Okay, I think we can go on from there.
Tracy, this is Anna. I just have a question before we go on to this poll. Can we go back to tip 3, making connections? I just wanted to ask you a clarifying question on that, if I could.
Sure.
How would you, what recommendations would you make for how APs can free up the time to make the connections? You know how when you're so busy during the day, where do you find the time to make these connections that you're talking about?
I'm lucky in that our division does schedule some meetings during the day, And so the principal and I here split kind of attending those. We both don't get to go all the time, but usually one of us goes. And then when we have our Winter Institute, he says we're both going because he also values those connections. So I think surrounding yourself with people that think the same way is a good thing. I would also say if you're looking at social media or things like that, pick a chat that happens on Saturday morning if that's when you're available, or pick a Thursday night. Like, just pick one that has a time that's likely to happen for you, to kind of make that initial piece. You can't do all of it, but at least pick a little piece. And I will say again that what you schedule is what you do. So if that's important to you, put it on your calendar and then work around there, because something else will fill in the time, no doubt.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. So, one thing I'm curious about is your experiences, and, which one of these things is most difficult for you to do, or that you think would be most difficult for you to do?
So I'm going to go ahead and launch the polling now.
Okay.
All right. And the results are, see that 47% say tip number 4.
It is. And I can honestly say that is, so important, because when you take care of that, you can take care of the rest. I expected the build capacity in others to come up, and I think part of that is sometimes as AP, we don't feel like we're in a role where maybe other people want us to do that. They want us just to take care of things that they don't want to. But all those people that you work with, take their lead on the things that are their strengths and their passions, and really you can help them build kind of what they're imagining, and then you just get out of the way and let them go. So that's a good thing.
Are there any success structures that you would recommend for that? I mean, how do you do it?
I guess the first thing I do is, once an idea gets out there, I try and find the people who are interested in that. So maybe something has gotten my attention. So right now, one thing, like in a lot of schools, we're talking about personalized learning. So all right, who are the people that this is of interest to? So I find that out usually. Then look at some professional development for them. Tag yourself along so you really get a sense of where they want to go with it and what you can support as well. And then for me, even things that seem to help teachers are creating the agenda. So when they get together, talk about, all right, what do we know? Where do we want to go? What's the next step? And just being the person who lays out that. And then between then and the next time you meet, a lot of times they're busy making things happen, and you just get to check in and say, all right, where are we? What's next? And there's usually things that you need to do as well, but by just kind of being that organizational backbone, that kind of becomes your job, and then they let the other pieces unfold.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. And at this time, as we get closer to the end, we can go to the chat box if anybody has any questions for Tracy as she does the resource PowerPoint slide here last.
Okay, yep. And just on here for additional resources, they're just some quick articles on more tips to kind of create that balance and time efficiency. I will say what the top one is one of my favorites. Jessica Cabine talks about principles and balance and has a great perspective and just great reminders and great visuals for somebody who's looking for them and how to create that piece of balance.
Now, I did have a question for you. You had Michael Fullen. Was that a hyperlink that we had back there?
Under the video, it is. And the other is just a book.
Okay. I just wanted our viewers to actually get that or see that hyperlink if we could, just in reference to. Okay. Yep. Great. So you have it. And if you want to see that, you can. It's just 2 minutes and 19 seconds on your own time. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Absolutely.
For that. So I will take any questions before we move on. Honor, do we have any questions in the chat box?
We sure do. Broderick says, what is your opinion of the assistant principal's role in curriculum and instruction?
Oh, that's such an interesting question for me because I come from a curriculum and instruction background. And I will be very honest in telling you I probably have a little bit of a non-traditional setup here. My background is curriculum and instruction, and so part of the reason I'm in the position I'm in is because of that. The principal that I work with loves all things behavior. So regardless of your, setup, probably a little bit flip-flop from mine, think that you're a lead learner, no matter what position you're in the school. So it's hard to separate behavior from instruction and instruction from behavior, so you have to have a sense of what's going on and what things in classrooms might be happening that influence behavior, because a lot of curriculum and instruction things do play a role into that. It's student engagement based, so you've got to have your pulse on what's happening with curriculum and instruction, even when you're working primarily with behavior.
Brenda asks, do you have any book recommendations for that? I'm assuming curriculum instruction.
Ooh, off the top of my head. Really, I try to just kind of go through the ASD books as they come out. Let me think on that, and I can put some in the chat, some of the more recent ones I've read. I kind of tend to read all over, not just education, and back and forth. So some favorites I think that help with some curriculum things are actually some of the PLC books. That talk about, really what's the focus, so that, and Marzano's work would be some other stuff that I'd look at, knowing what a guaranteed and viable curriculum is and how that's different than a scope and sequence would be other pieces. But I'll add some to the chat at the end if that works.
Thank you. And Amanda asks, how can I begin to build capacity in teachers regarding implementing standards-based instruction and rubric grading? Any readings or book recommendations on that?
So that's something that we've recently worked on here. This is our first year using a standards-based report card. And for those pieces, I think the beginning pieces is the philosophy behind it, helping people understand what the role of a report card or assessment is, and then once you have the philosophy behind it, also at the same time understanding how some of the current grading practices go against the philosophy that you've established. When you're putting zeros in grade books and things like that. And so the first piece is just helping them build that knowledge and understanding there. And I will pull some of the books while Stephanie is speaking and share out what we've used.
Oh, well, thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate all this information, the resources, and Tracy's information is there. Go ahead and finish out, Tracy. I apologize.
No, absolutely. Just remember to give yourself a break. This job gets crazy, but it doesn't get much better than this. Enjoy it. And by all means, feel free to contact me, either email or Twitter, and I will grab those resources and make sure they get shared out as well.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again, Tracy, and Tracy's information, again, is there at the bottom of the screen. Our next speaker is also a 2017-2018 National Outstanding Assistant Principal of the Year. Let's welcome Stephanie Palmer. Stephanie's been waiting so patiently for her opportunity here. And Stephanie, basically, on our topic of time management, her title is going to be called Always Take Care of the Big Rock First. Now, I'm very interested in this topic, Stephanie, so let me know about this, taking care of the big rock first. But tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate you guys having me today. I'm presently an assistant principal of a 1st through 8th grade building in the Interborough School District. We are the smallest school in our school district with about 350 students and about 54 staff members, teachers, and assistants. There are 4 community schools within my district, as well as the local high school. So we all work together as a tight-knit family to be able to reach our goal. Some other roles that I have in my life: I am a wife. I am an adjunct professor for the master's program at Wilmington University for gifted instruction. I'm a scuba diver instructor, and I also most recently am a therapy chicken handler. So I have my hands in a lot of different things, all which I believe make me a better person, and it allows me to help my students and reach, my faculty and staff in different ways.
Well, having all those hats, I know you have to actually build in time to manage your time. So I'll listen to your presentation and learn about this big rock theory. Thanks so much.
I definitely appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
So many of us have heard about, whether through Facebook or through emails, about the MIT lesson where the professor pulls out a jar and he puts in these large rocks. And he says, class, is my jar full? A lot of students say, yes, the jar's full. I can't fit anything in there. It's good. And he tends to pull out another bag of a little bit smaller gravel, and he said, let me just dump this in here. How about now? Does it look full now? And they all nod their heads, yes, yes, it's full, until he pulls out sand, which is even smaller than the gravel that he put in. With that sand, it fills in all of those little spots. I've even seen an extension of it where then somebody takes water and they put the water in. There's always space for something else. So what does this have to do with us as assistant principals? Why am I bringing up rocks in education? So in our line of work, we constantly need to prioritize. Tracy mentioned values. That is definitely something that we need to figure out right from the beginning. What are our big rocks? Is it family? Is it, for some of us, religion? Is it working with our peers? Is it student discipline? Whatever your role may be, what are your big rocks? And we need to handle those big rocks first, whether it's in our personal life, whether it's in our professional life, even day to day. What are our big rocks going to be for that day? Do I have to have a conversation that might be a little bit more difficult with the teacher? Or is it something that I have a long-standing commitment that I have to do the day? So, for example, I have been labeling PSSA books and trying to organize PSSA groupings and make sure that all my assistants are supported by staff members and make sure that all my students that have accommodations on their IEPs and 504s, that their needs are being met. So today, they were my big rocks. Can I have the next slide, please? So in this theory, this is noted as the big rock theory. It can be applied, like I stated, to all aspects of our life. And like I said, it can be used daily. It can be used weekly, monthly, yearly. It can be used in different capacities within our lives. Like I said, professional and personal. With our jobs, those tiny pieces of sand can clog up our schedule. So we do need to remember to focus on those bigger rocks first before we go worrying about the small stuff. Every time I hear about this topic, that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, comes to mind. And I definitely feel that that falls into line with discussing on this topic. So when you're picking those big things to focus on, they should always be the non-negotiables in your schedule. So like I stated before, your health, family, finances, for our professional lives, our school mission, our climate, our instruction. These are the things to focus on first. Next slide, please. So another way to organize and prioritize our professional and personal lives is to write down your list of priorities. I know Tracy stated that she puts it on her calendar. If it's not written down, it's just an intention. Oh, I'll get to that sometime later this week, or I'll get to that this afternoon. And then by the time you get to lay your head down on your pillow at night, you realize you never got to that. And it becomes an extension for the following day. So the best thing that I have found personally is to make sure it's written down. I too have a book that I am constantly writing in. Matter of fact, most of my peers actually made fun of me because they're like, oh, here comes Farmer and her binder again. But I always make sure that I carry my book around, and I make sure that if somebody needs something in the future, they know that they can come to me because I've documented everything. Next, check off or document progress so you see how far that you've come and what you have left to do. So it's always going to be much easier to keep going if you can see how far you've already gone. Always start with the end in mind, what you want to accomplish in the end. And that's going to help lead the beginning and how you get started in your different projects. And then lastly, reflect on your list and what you have accomplished. Have some self-reflection as far as there anything that you would change or that you could have done more effectively or efficiently. This is obviously, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Honor.
I apologize for interrupting, but I had a question about that. I didn't want you to go to the next slide.
Sure.
your recommendations for assistant principal, would they do this technique at the beginning of the morning or at the end of the afternoon with writing down all the priorities and things? Is it better for them to do it in the morning once they arrive at work or at the end of the day? I didn't just wanted to get clarity on that. Or when?
I think for me personally, it depends on how each day goes. Okay. I definitely have a list of things that I need to accomplish. Each year we print off a calendar of events that has this is what is going to be due for this month.
Okay.
And we have 2 months of that scheduled at a time. So we're able to reflect ahead a little bit.
Okay.
But at the same time, if I know that I'm having a really tough day, I handle a lot of the discipline as most assistant principals do. So I find that, you know, by the end of the day, if I'm struggling and there are things that I definitely did not get to that day that I need to make up the following day, I'm going to start that list the day before so I know that when I come in, these are the first things that I'm going to target and I'm going to hit on the next day.
Great. Thanks so much for that advice.
No worries.
And Tracy, I have a question too on that. You know, do you ever run into where your list is so long and you've got so many priorities between work and home? How do you prioritize?
And sometimes it means making a decision between what's the most important now, and to do that I have to think about why that piece. Or there are some non-negotiables, like every job comes with certain things that you can't not do, and sometimes that means even a family issue gets set aside because it's a not can't do. But for me, as long as most of the time every time I can, I make the decision I can to be with my family, it's okay, and my family knows that. So I think that's that piece. And I also think the more you build capacity, the more people there are to step in when you have too many things on your plate. So there may be 5 things that you absolutely need to get done today, and there's no way that you can do them all. But you know that if you reach out to this person, they have the skills and the passion to be able to take care of that, and so they can help with that. And so I think that's another piece that helps.
What do you think, Stephanie?
I agree completely. I mean, I feel that having a supportive group around you, my husband, bless his heart, he has put up with more things that I'm like, oh, by the way, I have a school board meeting, or I have a home and school meeting tonight, that I have put on my calendar and I remember, but I just forgot to pass on that information to him. But recently he has become a part of a school family as well, so he's a little bit more understanding at this point. But I mean, the same thing, I would just make sure that everybody is aware of expectations and intentions, and you go from there.
Awesome, thanks.
I would also add, sometimes I double dip, if that helps. So we have some like administrative responsibilities regarding supervision and things like that. So the ones that I choose to take on first are the ones that also my kids may be performing in. So they need somebody to supervise the high school band concert. That can be me because my kids are going to be in it, so that makes sense. So I take advantage of that when I can as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so a couple tips to use time effectively. Consolidate similar tasks. So those different things like paperwork and bus forms and office referrals and permission slips, the stuff that might not be so fun, that are more that administrative task, try to lump that together. So maybe you do that towards the end of the day, or you have while you're eating your lunch or before you eat your lunch, you know, you state, okay, I'm going to get through 5 or 6 of these office referrals before I do the next thing. Tackle the tough jobs first. So maybe there was a fight after school that needs investigation, or a new schedule that needs to be created. Get it done, get it out of the way. Once again, know your big rocks. Learn to delegate. I completely agree with Tracy. Make sure that you are helping others hone their skills to be productive leaders. There are not a lot of teachers that want to take on that administrative kind of quasi role, but there are some. So you want to know what your team's strengths are and to be able to tap into those. It'll make your life so much easier, and you'll know definitely who you're able to depend on. One of the issues that I do run into, though, with this is it's always the same people. So you want to make sure that you're not exhausting the same people over and over. Kind of spread it out a little bit. Learn to use idle time to accomplish those small tasks and get control of the paper flow, what comes in and what goes out. Tracy mentioned that her district is big on Google Docs lately. We have found that as we're training staff and as we're training assistants as far as how to utilize Google Doc, that we can be in different places. We don't have to be sitting next to each other collaborating. It's something that we can say, when you have a moment, look this over. If you want to make some comments, and then I can see it live and make corrections and changes throughout that time. And take time to plan. We did it as teachers, so why wouldn't we do it as assistant principals when we're in charge of so much more? Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Just a few more. Reduce interruptions and focus on the task at hand. I know that this can be one of the most difficult things to do, because just walking from the office to the other end of the building, I probably get stopped 10 times, whether it's through students or teachers, or my cell phone buzzing off, asking a question. Once again, make sure that you're focusing on what you need to get done and don't get caught up in the trivial things. Don't procrastinate. Some people work better under pressure, it's true. I know in college I worked great when I procrastinated, but it's not beneficial for your health or your stress levels or the stress levels of everyone else that's depending on you to get something done. And learn to say no. It's really okay. The people aren't going to think any worse of you if you say no. This is huge even in your personal life. You need to focus on your best interest at hand. And if the task you're being asked to do is not it, just say no. Your time's important and others need to understand that too. The next slide. Perfect. So where do you draw the line? When dealing with family in your job, how much time is too much time? So some skills for sharing your family time between your personal and professional lives could be to decide when you're going to leave for the day. Tracy mentioned that if she has something to do, she writes it in her calendar so her staff knows. This is great. It's not saying that, you know, what you're saying is not important, but these are my priorities for the day. And if something is really important, they can see you at any other time throughout that day. Make sure that you stick to the time. If you have a pile of office referrals that need to be done, they'll still be there tomorrow. It's okay to leave them. Focus on those big rocks. Wanting to support your students is great, but you're never going to be able to attend all their events. Like I stated earlier, I'm in a 1 through 8 building, so I've been invited to concerts and baseball practice and basketball practice and christenings and all of these things, which are wonderful to be involved in. But you can't be everywhere at once. So just pick a couple things throughout the week or the month that you're able to focus on and go ahead and let the parents know so the kids will be excited and expecting you. And like I stated before, there are times that we need to stay late, sure, but don't let this be the norm. Unfortunately, if you're always one that always stays late, people will just assume that, oh, it's okay, Steph's going to be there, don't worry about it. And your time, like I stated before, is just as important as anyone else's. So make sure that your time is seen as valued as well. And as far as my end notes, just remember that you do not manage time. You manage yourself, others, and the work you accomplish or that you don't accomplish. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. It just depends what you do with that time to make it count. So thank you so much for your time today, and happy Assistant Principal Week.
Yes, and I had a question for both of you all because, again, being an assistant principal can be a stressful job. So how do you detox or all the stress is built up? How do you prepare yourself for the next week? So we get a weekend. What are some things or some strategies you can give to allow our principals to detox or let that stress out, because Monday is coming and it starts all over again. So I'll start with Tracy first, since Stephanie's presenting, and get your comments on that, Tracy.
Okay, I would go back to a lot of things that I had on slide 4, kind of that take care of yourself. So on the weekend, kind of some of my regroup things are, probably get a good walk in. I like nature, so that for me, getting outdoors and being kind of revitalized that way is a good thing. I feel better if I feel less stressed and better if I know that there's some good food ahead for the week. So I've probably got my meals planned out. I've done some grocery shopping. You can bet there's something that my husband and I are going to do, just the two of us, because he's also a small business owner. So his week is no less busy than mine. So between running around with the kids and everything, we're going to find a time to connect, and it might just be coffee in the Saturday morning with just the two of us. If I can get together with friends and laugh, that's going to make it on there too. So, you know, those things are the things that I would say sometimes the take care of yourself, wait till the weekend a little bit, and that's how I regroup.
Great. And you, Stephanie?
So as far as me, I grew up right outside of the Philadelphia airport, and we recently moved to Oxford, which is very rural compared to where I grew up. So being able just to go outside, like Tracy said, and enjoy nature, we saw a blue heron for the first time in our stream. So seeing different things like that and just exploring the world around me is definitely something I enjoy. I had stated earlier that I was a scuba diver, so I'm often underwater. And gardening, just detaching myself from the phone and from email and from all of the noise that we deal with every day.
Great. We'll go to the question box before we end out our session. But I wanted to thank you again, Stephanie and Tracy, for your information. And Tracy, do we had your information. Stephanie, did we get your information where if somebody wanted to email or tweet you or anything? Did you have your information there?
I believe my email was on one of the slides. I apologize.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Great. We have Stephanie's information is there if you want to get in contact with her as well. Honor, do we have any questions before we close out today?
So I've thrown out the question to our audience to ask them, how do you de-stress in just getting their thoughts? And Emily writes in, I read books for pleasure, and when I can, I read outside. If anybody else has any thoughts on that or any questions, please write it in the chat box right now. And in the meantime, both of you have shared a lot of things. I have a question for myself in terms of a new AP and all the job duties that you have and all the many stresses you have. In terms of finding the balance, you've given some strategies. Is there any other day-to-day things that you do, each of you, that kind of work in terms of making that balance happen? Either one of you.
I could say one thing that I do at work to help the balance is get out with the kids. The kids put everything in perspective. That's why we're here. So anytime you can get out of your office, I've purchased a standing desk. I take it out in the hallways. I work there. I have great conversations with people. Sure, from 8 to 8:30 I could be in my office, but I make sure I'm not. Instead, I'm out in the cafeteria with kids having breakfast, talking with them. There's something good for your soul in that, and that helps de-stress and helps you better balance things.
Wonderful. Braddock adds, he walks in the mall to relieve stress.
That's a good one.
Stephanie, what about you?
I agree. Get out of your office. Get in with the teachers, see what's going on in the classroom. It's such a norm within our school that our teachers don't even blink twice when we wander into their room. And it doesn't become a disruption because we're so frequently in and out of there. Walking in the hallway, greeting the kids by names, getting to know a little bit about each of the staff members that you wouldn't normally know, learning your one new thing every day. That's just a norm here.
Great. Well, it's Assistant Principals Week, and I encourage everyone to go to our website. We have several resources on there, especially with our archive webinars. We have several things that you can tap into as assistant principals. And please remember our Super Bowl of events, our 2019 Pre-K to 8 Principals Conference. It's going to be in Spokane, Washington, July the 10th through the 12th. Make sure you register. The link is below. We would love to see you there. And I want to again thank my panel today, Stephanie Farmer and Tracy Oliver, for being with us on this Assistant Principals webinar series. I want to thank my partner behind the scenes, Honor Feedy, as well as our Executive Director, Dr. Earl Franks, and our Associate Executive Director, Gail Morgan. I am Aaron Lurie, the Director of Professional Learning here at NAESP. Thank you again for joining this series. Next month, I believe the 6th of May, will be our last installment of our Assistant Principals webinar series. Please join us on a great topic. See you soon and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.